Hey everybody, it's Ed. Before we start, I want to thank John Joya for signing up to support the podcast through Patreon. Patreon is a way to support the podcast monthly. And so if you want to learn more about that or any of the other options, you can go to mountainandprairie.com/support. Thanks a lot. Hey, this is Ed Robertson, and this is the Mountain and Prairie Podcast, where I introduce you to some of the innovative individuals who are shaping the future of the American West. I meet most of these people through my work in land conservation or through my hobbies and interests that revolve around spending time up high in the mountains. My guests include ranchers, writers, entrepreneurs, conservationists, athletes, artists, adventurers, pretty much anyone who's doing important work, has an interesting story, and loves the American West. My guest today is Steve Casimiro. Steve is the founder and editor of Adventure Journal, an online and quarterly print magazine devoted to outdoor adventure in all its forms. AJ began as Steve's personal blog back in 2008, a project he created on the side while writing for National Geographic Adventure. Steve's unique perspective and devotion to adventure writing struck a chord with the outdoor community, and AJ's audience grew and grew. When National Geographic Adventure closed its doors in 2009, Steve decided to pursue AJ with his full professional focus, building a loyal following who's deeply devoted to AJ online and in print. Steve grew up on the East Coast, and from an early age, he was obsessed with writing, photography, and storytelling. After earning a degree in journalism, he spent his early 20s writing for traditional newspapers, including USA Today. But when presented with the opportunity to meld his passion for the outdoors with his journalism career, he left the newspaper business to join the team at the legendary ski magazine Powder. From there, Steve immersed himself in all aspects of the adventure media world, honing his craft for storytelling and dialing in his voice as a writer and editor. The culmination of those years of hard work is Adventure Journal, which is, in my opinion, one of the most essential voices in the outdoor community. It's no secret that I'm a massive fan of Adventure Journal. I reference it often in my weekly newsletter and also suggest the quarterly print publication in my reading recommendation emails. But what I find most impressive about Steve is how he's built such a loyal community of like-minded outdoor enthusiasts, curious, thoughtful, open-minded readers who enjoy thinking deeply about the outdoors and adventure. In this conversation, Steve shares how he managed to create such a unique community and what drives him to work so hard to continue to build it. We talk about AJ's values as a business, and we discuss his recent commitment to make AJ carbon neutral. We talk about how Steve welcomes ideas and opinions that he may not necessarily agree with, and the unique niche that AJ fills in the outdoor community. Steve also discusses how his wife, Joni, who is the art director of AJ, has also played an invaluable role in the growth of the magazine. We talk about the importance of attention, the need to support independent media, what he looks for in writers, the importance of optimism, his ideas on building community, and much, much more. Whether you're a writer, photographer, business owner, community builder, or just an outdoor enthusiast like me, I can promise that you'll learn a lot from this conversation. And be sure to keep an eye on my Instagram account because I'll be doing a giveaway of a few copies of AJ later this week. You can find a link to that account in the episode notes. Thanks again to Steve for taking the time to join me. Hope you enjoy. Just before we got on, I was looking on Adventure Journal, and I saw that you guys just made a really big announcement. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and about kind of the thought process that went into that announcement.
Yeah, I would love to. So we just announced that we are contractually committed to being carbon neutral. And the agreement is with Climate Neutral, which is a nonprofit NGO that was started by the founders of Peak Design and BioLite. And these folks have been environmentally oriented since the get-go. In fact, BioLite started because the founders had learned about how many health issues there are because of smoke from cooking fires in Africa. Mm-hmm. So they set out to make a smokeless stove, essentially, or one that reduces it to try to, millions of people are affected or die every year from this. And so their roots are in trying to do good. So they looked at like, okay, the issue of carbon emissions is the issue of our time. How do we deal with this? For most brands, the ability to measure and then accurately offset what you're putting into the atmosphere is, like, financially, it's just well beyond. Like, it can be very, very, very expensive. And as you can imagine, it's complicated.
Yeah.
And so they got together and they got their staffs together and they got experts together. And in 2019, they launched climateneutral.org is the URL, to enable brands like us to have a more accurate way of measuring upstream and downstream emissions and what we're doing, and then help us get on a path to reduction inefficiencies. And I wanted to do it I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And I was thinking, even like through what these guys do, it would be kind of expensive because you have to pay them for the service. They're
sure.
You got to pay them. And so finally I reached out to a friend of mine who does PR for him. I'm like, can you connect me? Like, I feel like this is just like out of reach, but I want to see. And so I went through the questionnaire on the website and realized that, one, our emissions are not that huge because of the efficiencies that we already have. And two, the costs they're not insignificant, but they're not so much that we can't do them. And so we signed the contract almost immediately and then announced it today. So I'm just thrilled. And one of the things that maybe serves as a prelude for where the conversation goes, and one of the reasons that AJ exists is that I wanted to take all the wonderful things that I had learned at magazines like Bike and Powder and National Geographic Adventure and freelance. I freelanced at some point for everybody: Men's Journal, Outside, Sierra, Fortune, Forbes, Elle magazine. You name it. Like, I've worked with so many of these great titles, and I wanted to take all the wonderful things and get rid of all the crappy things.
Yep.
And so AJ was founded from the get-go to be. Well, originally it was my personal blog where I was still working with Nat Geo Adventure at the time. And there were a lot of pieces that I wanted to do that they just didn't think fit with their format or were that interesting. And I felt like I knew they were interesting. And so it was a place for me to have an outlet for the stories about people and events and things that I felt were still important to the outdoor adventure culture, even if they weren't important or didn't fit with a traditional commercial consumer magazine.
Yep.
And so that's been our ethos all along. And at every step of the way, I've tried to do the best that I can with it. And, while trying to figure out profitability. And so where we are now, what we know in 2020, like, man, we have some big challenges that we're facing. And so this feels like a natural step, but also one that even a year ago, I didn't know that we would ever be able to take.
When I read the article on Adventure Journal website, it mentioned that you guys are one of the first, if not the first, publications to take this step. Is that correct?
It is, as far as I know. Now, within Climate Neutral, there's a very small website, adventure-oriented website that focuses, kind of ironically enough, mostly on overlanding. And then there's a little free newspaper, but we are the only ones with Climate Neutral. I did some research on this, and there are some larger publications or larger publishing companies that have claimed to do it, but none that apparently are certified.
Well, I mean, when I hear this, just thinking about it from a business standpoint, I mean, it's obviously not an easy thing to do, because if it were, you'd see everybody would be doing it. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. And so, why is it so important to you to put your money where your mouth is on something like this? And when you could easily not do it and it would be fine. And I don't know that anybody would really hold it against you, because none of your peers are doing that, but you've decided, all right, this is important for me. It's important for this publication. I mean, how do you do that? I guess that calculus in your head as a business owner, trying to, manage revenue and expenses combined with your personal value system. How does that play out? Because it's, you explaining it sounds pretty easy, but I would imagine it's not really that easy of a decision to make.
Well, so first, why? Because I have kids. And, yeah, I mean, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. Like, I look at what's happening in the world today. I mean, we're just, I don't know when people are listening to this, but we're obviously we're still in the fire season, right? Like, the worst of the fires seem to be tamed right now, but we're still especially in Southern California, like we've got another couple of months to go. So like we know that climate change is here now and we have to deal with this. And so, my children, they're grown. And my daughter's in college, but my son's on his own, and they're amazing people and their hearts are so bent toward doing good in the world. But I look at the world that they're going to be growing up into. And I look at the world that if they choose to have children, that their children, my grandchildren will be in. And if I don't feel like I did everything possible to improve things, I couldn't live with myself and I couldn't look at them. The other thing that's become, like I've been looking at climate change since the 80s. Okay. So, yeah. and not really doing anything since the 80s, except talking about it. And it's really clear that we just don't have a lot of time. We have about a decade to really kind of stem the worst of it. And so the fires actually were really a catalyst for me. One of the challenges with AJ is, like, how far do you go with these things before you start to alienate people?
Mm-hmm.
How far do you go before like your customers are like, too much politics, give me more stoke. And that's a valid criticism, or not criticism, it's a valid commentary. And so, we, from the beginning, I've covered environmental issues for years. Patagonia underwrote a daily environmental story. So it's always been important to us, but trying to figure out what that balance is. But what I have realized and what is flipped for me, and I'm conscious from calling it self-radicalization, is that in 2020, like the chickens have come home to roost. And as much as we can do as individuals, it's going to be far more powerful when we can make the change through our businesses and as consumers, when we can raise the expectations about what acceptable normal behavior is on the part of businesses. And so our numbers really are like small by like any measure. Our total sales are small, our circulation is small. We reach a lot of people online. I mean, I think like across all of our channels, social and whatnot, we reach, I don't know, like 5 or 6 million impressions a month. But really, it's just not that big. And so I think that the greatest value, or one of the greatest values that we can have, is showing that a business can do it, and showing that we can do it. And also, maybe putting some pressure on other businesses and particularly other people within our space to do the same thing. Like, why are we the only journal, the only periodical that replaces the trees that it uses? Mm-hmm. We are the only one that I could find in the United States. Now, my friends at Surface Journal, I think, are moving in that direction, but at least the partners that we're working with to replant the trees, none. And there's like little newspapers here and there, but like on a magazine level, and certainly none of the big ones, there's none. I think at this point, there are 3 publications that are members of Conservation Alliance. We are rejoining 1%. We had to drop out when we launched in print because our revenues went way up and our profits went way down. But we're rejoining 1%, and I think that we are one of 2 or 3. I'm not sure the exact number. It's enough to count on one hand. Mm-hmm. And so I think that I have a responsibility. If we can do it, I think I have a responsibility to help other publishers to do it, maybe to create some peer pressure to do it, but also as a consumer of media to create this expectation that the old ways are not enough, that our problems are, they are right in our face. And as Bill McKibben of 350.org said, this is humanity's first timed test. We don't have all day, and every day that does go by without us doing something is another day lost. So I feel like it's really, really critical. Even if it's not easy, and even if like a brand or a publisher who's, maybe orders of magnitude bigger than AJ, there are bigger challenges for them, certainly. But at least we should be asking hard questions of the brands that we support with our attention and our money about what they're doing and where they're going.
Well, that leads me to the next thing I wanted to talk to you about that attention part, and about how people are putting their attention in lots of different forms of media these days. A lot of it's garbage. Some of it is mediocre, and then some of it is very well thought out. And there are kind of 2 parts to that question, 2 parts to that subject. One is, voting with your dollars, putting your money where your mouth is, supporting journalism that is in depth and that is coming from a place of thoughtfulness. And Can you talk a little bit about just your thoughts, not so much about AJ, but just about the importance of where consumers put their attention these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two ways to come at that. And the first is just from a pure mental health standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love/hate the term doom scrolling because, it so perfectly captures what I'm doing on any given day on Twitter or wherever it may be. And, I think that we all know the issues around screens, right? And what that does to us and dopamine hits and all that sort of stuff. So I think that we need to be more really cognizant about what we're putting in our brains, because it's not all that different really than what we put in our bodies as food, right? Like It's still the fodder for our thoughts. And, this is one of the reasons why we've been so, from the beginning, insistent that AJ in print is designed to be experienced in print. It's this gift that we're giving to ourselves because, we're as obsessive or compulsive about, screen time as anybody, right? So we wanted to create a space where you can absolutely just like not have those kind of distractions and maybe, get into a better headspace. The second thing is, I think it's really important to be an educated consumer of media and to understand why we choose to do the things that we do, why we choose certain stories, why we present them a certain way, why we do links, why, pretty much every outdoor site now is just like one sale or gear review after another. There are very specific reasons why these things are there. And so the more that we understand about that process, the more then I think that we can, one, better experience what we're reading,
Mm-hmm.
sort of understand the context, know the messenger and all that. Because even if it's not sponsored content, there's reasons for it.
Yep.
And then also, I think that I really believe that we should reward and conversely punish media that we don't agree with their overall approach. And I don't mean like whether we agree with a story or an opinion or an op-ed. I think it's really important that we have mixes of voices there.
Yeah.
But I mean more like, what does this publication stand for, and what are they doing in the world, and does that overlap with your values enough? Because if it's, as we know, if it's free, you're the product, right? So it's your eyeballs, it's your time. It's getting you to click on affiliate links, it's getting you to click on ads and look at ads. Like if it's free, then that attention that you're giving is what they're selling to
Mm-hmm.
other people, to advertisers. So I don't know. I just feel like the most precious thing that we have is time. And I think that especially when we're young, we don't really think about that too much.
Yeah.
But it has this huge impact that affects everything. The amount of time that you spend on site A versus site B, you're going to be like, you're basically voting for site A. Just make sure you feel really good about what A is doing, in addition to enjoying what it is that they give you to read. Are there
any business leaders or people in the media business, just people in general that have helped shape your thoughts on this? Because from my perspective, it seems like you're so focused on the process of you want to feel good about what you're doing. I mean, you obviously want people to read it and you want that kind of thing, but you're focused on the daily process of creating this publication that aligns with your values. And I was just wondering, have you looked at anybody either through history or people you've worked with who have served as a good example of this that you've tried to emulate, or has this just kind of been a journey that you've been on by yourself?
Oh gosh, I mean, there's so many people over the years that have affected me for positive and negative, or things, seeing things. Well, I don't want to do it that way, or I do want to do it that way.
Yeah.
I'm pretty independent and self-directed, and I don't think anybody. I remember when Casey Sheehan was the editor of Powder at the time, and I was second, and he was moving up to publisher, and I was being promoted to editor. And I said to him, I don't know if I can basically fill your shoes. I don't know if I can do as good a job. And he said, well, then if you can't, then you shouldn't take the job. And it's like, if you don't think that you can come in and do better,
mm-hmm.
then you shouldn't. You shouldn't be in management, or you shouldn't start a product, or whatever it is. And that really was a good lesson for me. And AJ exists for that reason. I thought I could do better. I've looked at the outdoor magazine space for since I was a powder in the 80s, and I always thought that I could do better. And my time spent with National Geographic Adventure, what a phenomenal magazine. And I was so blessed to be a part of that crew. But I felt like I could do it, I want to use the word better, I felt like I could do a different magazine that could speak to the outdoor culture, certainly in an equally valid way. I think that there are actually few leaders in our space, really. They're like, whenever I go to the OR show, I ask people, like, who are the big thinkers? Like, who are the people that you feel like are leading? And there just weren't that many. And I think now we're seeing a different kind of empowerment. We're seeing athletes unafraid to speak up. We're seeing activists. There's pressure coming from the middle, from the bottom, and some from the top, which I think is amazing. I think that's really inspiring. I do think, he's sort of the poster guy for this, but it's hard not to tip your hat to Yvon Chouinard.
Sure.
And I was, when I finally sat down to read Let My People Go Surfing, his book about being an accidental businessman, which I also am now an accidental small business owner, I was actually astounded at how many things that he had to say that I was already doing.
Yeah.
Just because I'm really idealistic and opinionated and I think I know better, And so like one of the things that really resonated for me in the book is like, if you can't be the best, like if your goal isn't to be the best at what you're doing, then why are you doing it? Why would you be second best? Unless you want to make some commodity product that you undercut people on price. I was like, yeah, that's right. That's exactly what I'm trying to do with AJ. Now we can quibble about what best means, but like I want to make something that nobody else has ever made. And when I was younger, I thought, could you, like, there's been so many people in the world, could you ever have an original thought? I was really dismayed when I was like 14 years old. Like, could I ever have an original thought? And I realized, like, it's just like my friends that have different publishing companies, whether Surfer's Journal or the folks at Height of Land who are doing Alpinist or whatever. Like, we all have our own perspectives and we bring in all of this information and then we put it back out in a different way. And so, that was really powerful. Like, okay, yeah, that's what they're trying to do. I see that. I don't know where I got that lesson, but like, yeah, why not try unless you can, be the absolute best at what it is you want to do.
No, I think I agree with that completely. I mean, I think you have to be kind of obsessed, especially in the world you're in. I mean, it's competitive. And I think so many people have dreams of being in that world, but having dreams about it and doing it are two different things. And that brings me to another question I had. So when you started AJ Online, when you were still working as a freelancer and you were kind of building that thing up, when did you realize that you had a legit audience? Like there's something here that I can continue to ramp this thing up. I imagine there was a turning point somewhere in there where it was a side project. I read somewhere that you said you wanted to build the publication that you wanted to read. And so you had built this thing. It was great for you, but what was the point when you realized, all right, other people like this too, and there's something here and I can keep ratcheting it up?
There wasn't a point like that.
Really?
Actually. No.
Just kind of slow and steady?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I guess, one of the nice things, my wife is an art director and she's the art director of AJ, and she was the art director of Surfer Magazine for many years. And we kind of joke about like the writers, photographers, their bylines versus art directors who are pretty well hidden, and yeah. I mean, I had been with such great magazines and have written so many stories and shot so many photos for so long that I think, and also my writing tends to weave a lot of the personal into it. So I think people felt like I felt like I had an audience, like this was before people had Instagrams or anything like that. But I felt like there was, I want to use the word fan base because it just seems kind of cheesy to me. But I mean, like it's sort of like there was people knew my work, right?
Sure.
And they were maybe predisposed to like, oh, okay, I'll read more. And so, and plus the outdoor industry is small. I mean, you kind of get to know everybody, or certainly as a writer, they know your name. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like as I was building up AJ, this was in 2009 when it was clear that Nat Geo Adventure was struggling. I didn't really want to go back out to the cold streets and knock on doors and live story assignment to story assignment. I thought, well, how do I build this up into something, commercially viable? The traffic was growing, the people were there. And I don't know. I felt like I had options, but based on what I wanted to do, I didn't really feel like I had any options. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make this work one way or another. And since then, it's been this experiment of, what kind of stories, how many stories a day, how do we push it out? How do I spend my time? And I think that we're in finally in a sweet spot, but it's taken 10, 12 years to get to a place where I'm pretty comfortable with where we are.
One of the things that first impressed me about AJ Online was the consistency of the stories that would come out, and to this day, every day at 3 p.m., and it changes with daylight savings time, I guess, but every day I can count on that email showing up in my inbox with great stuff that I want to read every single time. And it's a combination of interesting, fun outdoors, some serious things about climate change or public lands, but it's as if you've read my mind of the type of content and the tone of what I'm interested in. Can you talk about the importance of that consistency of doing it every day?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, the best, probably, at least one of the letters that touched me the most, this was back when people sent letters, and it was as a powder. And somebody wrote in response to an intro that I'd written, editor's letter to the magazine.
Yeah.
And all he said was, he said, "Stop, get out of my head. You're scaring me." I was like, okay, we've got a mind meld going on here. We're coming from the same place. And so, AJ, the stories that you see on AJ are a combination of, sort of my sort of being kind of a curmudgeon about like, don't waste my effing time, because I get really frustrated when people BS and they're trying to sell me. Like I really get my hackles up, and I see it all the time in media. And I'm like, just don't waste my time. I know why you're doing this. You're doing this for clicks. You're doing this to get people, you structured this headline so that people are titillated and want the answer, and they have to go all the way down to like the 15th slide to find the answer. Like, just do not do that. So with AJ, like, although it hurts us probably from a business standpoint, like we don't do pop-ups, we don't hound you to sign up for our newsletter. We don't clickbait you. We don't bug you. And the reason is because I don't want that experience for myself. And in the beginning, the people who read AJ were my friends. And as you know, being part of the outdoor adventure culture, like we have so much in common with people in any given mountain town or surf town or whatever. We know that we could parachute in and find friends pretty easily. And so my approach is to treat AJ readers with respect, as friends, as if I'm looking them in the eye and telling them the story face to face. And that is that's kind of like a major guiding principle. Like, let's not waste their time. Let's only write about things that we think are worth sharing. In fact, when writers, when they pitch me, are like, well, how do I work with AJ? This is true, especially for online. I just say, okay, so like, imagine you're on a chair, and you got, however many minutes till you get off at the top, or it's après and, everybody's got beer in their hand, and all of a sudden, like, you're telling a story and everybody's listening to you. Like, you're on a quad, and even the people you don't know are listening to you tell the story to your buddy. You got to make it short. You got to make it funny. You got to make it interesting. You got to make it clean, and then you're out.
Yeah.
And so, like, even our longer stories, I think about them that way. Like, okay, I have people's attention. They've given me their most precious thing, which is their time and their attention. I need to be true to that and give them the due respect.
I just feel like that's so unique in your world, because you go to, I'm not trying to trash anybody here, but go to outsidemagazine.com, and it's just one pop-up after another, and it gets exhausting. And it is what you said. I think what you're showing is you're showing respect for the reader, which I think is, unfortunately, is super rare. This is the first time you and I have ever talked, but I feel like I know you because I read AJ, and I feel like I understand, what is important to you. And it's almost like the brand and the publication is an extension of your values. And I know that you got your start in the traditional journalism world, like working for USA Today and newspapers. And so how was that transition from, I would say, like sterile, traditional journalism where you're not supposed to have an opinion, you're just reporting the facts, to creating this brand that really is a lot about you personally? Was that at all uncomfortable? Or was that more the natural state that you feel the most comfortable in?
No, it's been an evolution. It really has been an evolution. And I also would stress that the AJ is an extension of my values, but it's not a perfect replication of my values. And, AJ, whether it's online or in print, is always going to be a place where there's a diversity of voices. And, sometimes I don't especially agree with them, or, I would present them in a different way or whatever. And that's part of the beauty of it. And so I feel like, I worry that if I say this, that it sounds like I'm really full of what we're doing, but I'll say it anyway, because I kind of feel like my role is to be the instigator. My role has been to create this thing that gets filled mostly by other people and their passions and their talents. And, I know I'm kind of like the orchestra leader, right? And I know everything comes through me and it comes through Joni. Everything you pick up, it's like, it has come through us. But I feel like when we get when I get the first bounds in my hand, I feel really detached from it. And I don't feel like I had really that much to do with it. I feel this incredible joy that this thing exists, and that all of these voices have come together in this presentation, and the way that it flows through the issue and the photography. And we made those decisions, but I don't feel that way by the time that we get to that other end. I feel like, whoa, this thing just dropped into my lap. And I take so much pleasure in rereading it, if I can, not like freak out and worry that there's a typo or something like that. But I really don't mean that to sound arrogant or like, we think that our farts don't stink. I mean it in that we have amazing, talented contributors whose hearts are bent on telling great stories about things that matter. And so I feel like AJ is the vessel for that, and my job is really to kind of like try to set the guardrails and to, bring focus on values that I think are more important at a given time than another, whether that's, diversity or less elitism or climate or whatever it is. I have to sort of like redirect here and there to keep the focus where I think it should be. But one of the things that I say to the people that we're working with is what are the stories you've always wanted to tell that you've never been able to tell? Like AJ can be that place. Like if these stories have good narrative that will appeal to a bunch of people and they help us learn about what it means to live an adventurous life, then we want those stories. And so, that's not really answering your question directly, but that's sort of like how I think of AJ, is that this was part of the beauty of being able to build this and build it when we didn't see it. And now it exists. In the fall issue, we did a portfolio with Sterling Lawrence, who's a mountain bike photographer in the North Shore of Vancouver. And I'd known Sterling's work for 30 years, but we'd never actually talked. I'd never met him or anything. And so when I interviewed him to get the information for the interview, and we had this great chat, and I was really impressed with like what a student, I guess, of media and of creators he was. Like his depth of knowledge about like who did what and when was like really incredible. And like he even remembered like when I was shooting back in the day that I was shooting with a Mamiya medium format film camera. I'm like,
wow,
dude, I didn't know you knew that I was shooting photos, let alone what I was shooting photos with. But one of the things that he talked about is that how much Bike Magazine changed the world. And I'm not taking credit for any of that. Like I just happened to be a part of a group of people that we were enabled to create that thing. But what all of us did see at the time, the existing publications, was that bike magazines were all about racing and gear. And we felt like that there was a more soulful experience out there, that it was about the experience and that shared experience with other people. And I am very proud that we were able to create that, and it's still going today. And then it changed the bike industry, that it completely changed how people thought a publication should be. Maybe something would have come along eventually, or the internet would have done that. But like in '93, there wasn't anything else. And I'm not suffering any illusions that AJ is going to change anything. But I do feel like if you're going to take the time and invest this energy and put your mortgage or whatever on the line to bootstrap something, then I think that you should approach it with this idea of doing something completely new and maybe something that can change the world. Like, again, coming back to what YC says, like, if you're not trying to be the best, if you aren't aiming to like remake the world, then why? And so that is, I don't know where the switch was there from journalism to, like more personal narrative publication, but it is like, I think it gives us so much more potential and possibility and imperative to create something really unique. And I know I tend to go on and on and on. My sound bites are not short, but I do just want to say one last thing about that.
Please.
One of the really important lessons for me from my years at Powder and Bike was the kind of connection that you can make with other people through shared experience, a commonality. And, we know that whether you're paddling or trail running or climbing, whatever it is, like we know that these things mean a lot to who you are and what you stand for and your identity. And sharing that with other people, like you instantly know that this person shares those values for you. And so one of the things that is woven into the DNA of AJ is that this is really about universal human elements, that adventure becomes the excuse for us to explore these other things in life that are really important, whether it's love or sacrifice or charity or whatever it may be. That, sometimes it's just about the stoic of getting a face shot, but it's also about these deeper lessons and how that changes us as people. And so that has been that. If there was a moment that flipped, it was when I realized that in writing really personal stuff in my interest at Powder and hearing people respond to that, hearing people tell me that they changed their lives based on something that I wrote, it was like there was a switch that flipped, and there was no one element, but it was like, okay, wow, there's something really, really powerful here. What could we do with this together?
I found online a really great interview between you and Brendan Leonard. I think it's on Outside's magazine's website, and I'll link to that so people can read it. But you mentioned those intros you would write and how you got a letter from a guy who had read one of them, and it spurred him to pack up and move to Europe, where he became a ski bum. And I imagine you've got a lot of those. And outdoor adventure for me personally, I mean, it is life-changing. And the most powerful experiences, other than family stuff, the most powerful life-changing experiences I've had have been in the outdoors, having adventures, generally getting my ass kicked in one way or the other. But I feel like it's made me a better person. And can you speak to that idea of just kind of you already have a little bit, but to the power of outdoor adventure and how it can be life-changing? And maybe if you have any stories off the top of your head of people that have reached out and talked about how your work or the work of AJ has changed their life, I'd love to hear them.
Well, first off, do not believe a word that Brendan says. Like,
he's a huge liar. No.
Oh my God. He makes all that up.
Complete liar. I don't even think that's his real name.
It's not. It's Leonard Brendan. I can address that. And I think anybody that knows me knows how much I love Brendan. He has been, I just remember the first time I came across his writing and I was like, who is this guy? Because I felt like he tapped into something. I'm on the hunt for these people who can like show us things in a new light. And, looking at things in a new light it's just not easy, really. And somebody who can do that and do that consistently in their writing is really rare. And, I was just so thrilled and grateful that, he became a part of AJ early on and is still a really important part of AJ. So, I've gotten letters or emails from people I've gotten notes from people who are like going through cancer. I had, notes from somebody whose brother committed suicide, Wow. I mean, like there are all these things where, people are are just in deep. And I think that finding, somebody who is maybe like-minded or open-hearted and empathetic, that, I think that one of the things about being really open about what you're feeling through these experiences that other people can relate to, you even though we're talking about like print, and pixels or whatever, like you can make a kind of connection,
Mm-hmm.
Writing an adventure magazine is nowhere near as powerful as what you might feel in a song, but it's not so different, right? That I think that we're all fragile creatures in one form or another. We're all broken in one form or another. And we're all looking for those things where we feel like somebody else is going through the same thing.
Yep.
And I think that as a creator, as a writer and an editor, and I think that's kind of a public trust. I think that we have to we need to think about that. So as much as I think that people should be informed consumers of media, I think that photography is different. I think that writers in particular need to be more cognizant of exactly what it is that they're putting out in the world and how they might receive it. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think you can go overboard. You can be aiming for the fences, trying to be like Mr. Poignant, and then you usually look stupid. And I think that I've just been guided by, I have these feelings, right? Feeling all the feels, and they get triggered because most of my life is spent in and around and thinking about adventure, that they get all interwoven. And so, I don't know. I kind of feel like it should be part of our mission, because what is the point of being here if we can't make the world a better place, and if we can't somehow help other people in some way be better,
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty idealistic about it. I really am, and I'm so blessed at this point to be able to be where we are in our lives and our careers, to have the skills and the fan base or whatever to be able to do it. It's a struggle as a small business. It's definitely a struggle. Our hardest thing is selling subscriptions and getting people to buy into the idea that it's a good value at $60 a year. But, Joni and I talk about this all the time. This is our mission. This is our vessel. This is our ability to be able to do things that matter to us and hopefully to other people, which is, I think most of us spend our lives looking for that. Right. And I feel like we've found it. And so now it's just figuring out these things going carbon neutral. Okay, how do we do better with it? And how do we, how can we continue to reach more people with our message?
You're in the middle of it every day, and you have been for years and years and years and years. And it's just the way from this conversation, it just seems like that's the way you're wired. But I think it's really important for you to understand that what a important example it sets for everybody, because the thing you said about what's the point of being around if you're not going to leave an impact, I think anybody with a brain agrees with that. But there are all these forces at play that make people scared to pursue that path. And I was one of them. I was completely focused on trying to make as much money as possible up until about 2.5 years ago. And it was through this podcast, talking to people like you who are committed to a purpose, beyond just making money. They're mission driven, and it could be in art, it could be in journalism, athletics, whatever. But through talking to those people for 2 years, is talking to people like you eventually gave me the confidence to be like, all right, these people did it, so I can do it. And then I made the switch from real estate into land conservation, and I was 40 years old, and I'm like, man, I wish somebody had told me this when I was 20. I wish I'd had these examples when I was 20. And I trash the internet so much, but the internet is what allows me to be connected with you and with all these other great examples. And so, not that you need my approval or my rah-rah, but you're setting a very important example. And I am a case of somebody who has changed because of these examples. So, not that it matters what I think, but it's true, man. It's true.
It's wonderful to hear. We have, sort of both the blessing and the curse to be located outside the adventure, the physical adventure community. When I moved to, it's a long story why Powder was at the beach, but, I moved here to Southern California to take that job. And, I met Joni, and her family's here, and now, my mom is here, and our kids are here, and our life is here. And there's, I just sort of like, I was going to say ranting. I wasn't ranting, but we'll just say I was ranting about this on Instagram the other day, about how, like, there's so many adventurous people in Southern California, and the topography here for adventure is insane. I mean, there's actually a nice backcountry scene here, if you can believe it. Mm-hmm. But it's such a big place, and it's so diffuse that it's hard for people to come together, and it doesn't get any sort of chops. So, like, if I go to a ski town, like if I roll into Jackson or somewhere, like, I'll kind of get this feedback about, that how AJ touched people. Here, it's not so much. Like, I go through my day and, it's not even an issue. It's like it doesn't exist. Sometimes I think I put it out in the ether and, it's just sort of out there. But, one thing about our readers, or, maybe I should say our friends, is just that they're incredibly generous with their praise and also with their money. Like, we've got people who've bought 6, 7 gift subscriptions because they know we need more subscribers. And like, they're just incredible. And I think that, sometimes it's so hard to see the path ahead. Sometimes you're stuck. Mm-hmm. And I was stuck at NGA, like, I did what they asked me to do, and I was very grateful for it. And I was happy for it, but I was spending almost all my time on gear. And, I was like, God, I was the editor of Powder. I helped launch Bike Magazine. Like, I can do more than just gear. Yeah. And that was what they needed me to play. And I felt like a part of the family. I felt like a part of the mission. And I'm not throwing shade toward them in any way. It was more a reflection of, like, where I was at 40 or whatever I was at the time. I don't know. And what I wanted to do. And part of AJ, like, that was, the blog was sort of the initial, like, seeds of that. Like, okay, where can I go with this? And then it took the creative destruction of NGA in print going under that allowed me to, kind of, as I referred to before, like, to go all in, because there wasn't anything else that I really wanted to do. But man, I can really relate. There have been definitely a few times, even when I was at Powder, like, what a lot of people don't know about, I mean, this is really going back, but, in the late 90s, our titles, I think, meant a lot to the world of adventure, like surfer, yep. Snowboarder, bike, Powder. Like, in fact, I'm actually thinking about doing a story on all of the amazing people that came out of surfer publications, because it will kind of blow your mind. Really? Like, like, it really will. Like, for Aaron Droplin, Field Notes, was the art director of Snowboarder.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it was Snowboarder. I wasn't there at the time. But yeah, like, incredible, the number of people who were there. So, like, I've been there for 11 years, and I was kind of grooming Les Anthony to be the editor of Powder, and Rob Story to be the editor of Bike, because I just think it's time for me to do something else. Mm-hmm. And then both those guys left for unrelated reasons, and then I had a hard time, like, filling the slots. And then we were our president was actually trying to put together an employee buyout, which would have been amazing, like, for surfer buffs to have been employee run. Like, that would have been incredible. And she kind of came to me and Steve Hawk and a few other people and Doug Palladini, and she's like, "Are you in? Like, are you with me on this?" And in the end, the owners put it out for auction, basically, and it went to this ginormous leveraged company, and that sort of became the end of, like, that sort of golden era that we had at the time. And when they came and took over, like, a bunch of us were shown the door. Uh-huh. And it ended up being the best thing for me, because I was ready. Like, I was ready to do something else. And in hindsight, like, who knows what would have happened if we were able to succeed and run that. I may have gotten new skills and all sorts of cool things. But in the end, it was like, okay, like, I'm out in the world now. What am I going to do? And that led directly to, freelancing, which led directly to my relationship with NGA. And so, like, in my case, I didn't actually really make those leaps. Like, they were kind of forced upon me. Like, I kind of knew they were coming. You know what I mean? Like, you have the sense. And I made decisions about where I was going to go. But, like, I don't know how people, like, when I left Powder, like, I had a mortgage and a 1-year-old. Like, the people who make those leaps, without being forced out, like, that takes a lot of courage. Yeah. At the same time, those big those big changes have led to like the most growth I've ever had in my life. And that's the first thing. If I have a friend who's like been in a place for a long time, not that they need, my empathy or anything, but if somebody gets pushed out of a job that they've been in for a long time, that's a part of their identity. That's the first thing I say. And they probably know it, but like that kind of creative destruction can lead to amazing growth. And humans are so resilient, and especially if you're idealistic and if you have these values that you want to, have be your lodestar, then those offer you opportunities. These sort of resets offer you these opportunities to really think about what you're going to do. So, but man, like bailing on I'm assuming successful real estate career and doing a podcast, like that is a big leap of courage, and it's hard to do. But yeah, I think, even if you fail, and we've definitely failed at things with AJ, I could name half a dozen of them, like you still learn from them and it forms who you are for the next thing that turns into the success.
Would you say you're an optimist or a pessimist? I think I know the answer, but I just figured out.
Oh, God, I'm such an optimist.
Yeah.
I'm a cynical optimist. Are there such things as cynical optimists?
Do you have to force yourself to be an optimist? I mean, is that hard, like completely hardwired? Like that is just when you wake up in the morning, it's always the glass is half full, or is it something you've trained?
No, that's kind of who I am. Yeah. And, I generally am, I'm complicated, right? Like,
me too.
I don't want to be simplistic about it, but generally speaking, I'm like, the glass is half full, and holy cow, aren't we lucky to have a glass? Like that's how I try to approach the world. My wife, I feel like pausing and saying, on the other hand, but that's not really accurate. My wife Joni is much more of a realist than I am. She's a pragmatist, and she's not unidealistic at all. And what you see, everything that you see that we're doing with AJ, she is a part of integrally. It was her idea or she approves it. We are all in on this 100% together. So anything that you see in AJ, even if she doesn't get the credit on Instagram or whatever, she's had a part of it. So I think that's really, really, really important to note. But she's just grounding, she's like, okay, well, how are we going to pay for it? Or, like when we launched our little pocket notebook line, and, we've always loved what Aaron and those guys have done with Field Notes, but they don't have really an environmental story, and they don't speak directly to the outdoor culture. And, we thought maybe we can, like, no delusions of trying to compete with them. I mean, we just do our own thing.
Yeah.
And so, oh my God, I was like, if we did even a fraction of what Field Notes does, this is what the number would be. Like, think about what we could do. Like I was dreaming about like an AJ Foundation where we could do, like all these 10 things where we mentor people. And, like if we just did this, Johnny's like, yeah, but like you got to sell 100 before you sell 100,000. like I think we should probably print fewer. And because it's just really the two of us for the most part, we don't have a marketing department. We don't really have, we could put some money into marketing if we knew how to do it. I think we made amazing notebooks. We plant a tree for every 3-pack sold. So we basically are replacing 500 times the trees that we use. I think it's an incredible story, but like, we broke even and we're continuing to sell them, and it's fine. And she was absolutely right that we shouldn't print a bajillion. We should print like 1/10 of a bajillion, and we'll see where it goes. And so I think where AJ goes and our big decisions about AJ, I think that these, we really balance each other out. Like I wake up with these crazy ideas, and then she sort of lets me sit with them for a while. And we've learned, she's learned like, don't shoot them down right away. He'll come to his senses. And then we kind of figure out, okay. And sometimes we just abandon them because like, it was kind of a clever idea, but it doesn't make sense for us. Or then it becomes things like the tree planting program, the reforestation program. It becomes things that end up really becoming an integral part of what we do. But I think that you have to like if you're not an optimist, where are you going to get the dreams that create the vision that are going to lead you down the road to take those chances, right?
That's exactly right. And I think we ought to get our wives together because I think they'd have a lot in common to commiserate about, because my wife is the ballast to some of my crazy ideas as well, and it's invaluable. I mean, I don't know what I did before. Actually, I do know what I did before her, and it wasn't pretty. So that's I love hearing that. One question I wanted to ask, just kind of a practical question, because I imagine there are a lot of people who listen to this that dream of being an outdoor writer. And I've interacted with a lot of people who have worked with you at AJ, Brendan, obviously. I mean, he is such a generous guy in so many ways and just such a nice guy. And then I've recently gotten to know Chris Burkhardt, who's the same way, generous, nice, kind. And, they all speak so highly of you and how generous and kind you are. So what do you look for in a writer? Because obviously they need to write, they need to know how to write. But is there more to it than that? Because it really just seems like you've just got such a nice crew of people that you've surrounded yourself with, which is, unfortunately, it can be rare in the business world sometimes. So what do you look for when you're engaging with a new potential writer?
Well, it depends on where the writing is going. So is it going online? Is it a short news piece? Is it going in print? Is it a reported piece? Is it an essay? I think that one of the things that you have to be really careful is just to not try to bring, too much of your own preconceived ideas about what you're going to do with something. Like one of the things that criticisms of some of the magazines that I worked for, and this was their editorial decision, and that's fine. But like as a writer, like they try to create this univoice, this omnivoice, where everybody basically sounds the same.
Yeah.
And for a newspaper, maybe that's fine, but like for an outdoor adventure magazine, and part of the joy is that we're all these, nutcases with, really different ways of looking at the world, and we should, celebrate those things. In fact, one of the things that I've done in the past just for fun is try to like take a phrase and write it in ways that writers that I work with would do it.
That's
like
cool.
You know what I mean? Like Craig Childs would write it in a certain way, and Brendan would write it in a certain way, and Emily White, who is one of our senior editors, a contract editor, it knows all of these guys. She sent me something about a quote. So like, do you think so-and-so said this? And I wrote back to her, all these other people said it, already said it this way. And so did this up. And I totally punked her on it. Like she totally thought that Craig wrote it that way. And then Brendan wrote it that way. And so that it's really fun to do. And it clues you into like what their style is. So as an editor, when you're working with them, any sort of changes, especially if you have to make like big changes, you want them to be true to what they're doing. That doesn't answer the question, of course. But, I think I'm looking, you need people who can put together sentences and who can deliver things on time and who are easy to work with and with whom it could be a collaborative process. That's all kind of foundational stuff, and you would be surprised at actually how rare that is. I think people who understand, just like I think it should be the editor's mission to understand how each writer, what they're trying to say through their choice of language. I think it also is imperative on writers to know what the publication needs and what their style is. And, I get, oh my God, every day, I probably get 10, 15 pitches a day where I want to go, have you even read our magazine? Like, it's just so far from what we do. It's not even close. So, ideally with AJ, because I think that what we're trying to do is really something special. And because so much of it is coming from the heart, right?
Yes.
That I'm looking for writers who are committed or certainly capable of weaving those elements into a story as it's appropriate. Some stories it's not appropriate. Some stories it's just straightforward reporting. Other stories, like Craig has done a couple of pieces in the first issue. He wrote this piece called The Seed Jar about this. I won't take the time to do it, but it was like I was pinging him around deadline, going, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
And he goes, my hands are actually hovering over send on the keyboard right now, but they're shaking because it's one of the most personal things I've ever written.
Wow.
I was like, whoa. And it was incredible. I probably have read that story like 50 times now, and the nuance that he weaves into it is astounding. If anybody listening has a copy of the first issue, which is sold out, you should go and read it and give yourself the time and the space to read it quietly, because it is a masterpiece of revealment and journey and all kinds of things. So I think that those are just sort of foundational things. And then, they get expressed, uniquely depending on who the writer is. Like, Terry Tempest Williams is a friend, and she writes very much in her own style. We've excerpted Peter Heller's books.
Oh yeah.
David Roberts. I mean, I think ultimately though, we're looking for people that want to tell stories that matter, and maybe unconventional stories, but also take us hopefully in surprising ways on a journey from point A to point B, where you are somehow different from the beginning of the story to the end of the story, where the narrator may be different, or you as a reader are different. You have some kind of new knowledge or new reveal about a part of the world, or a new take on adventure, or whatever it may be. I mean, I think that any kind of magazine story, I mean, it has to take you on a journey. Like, there has to be some sort of difference, or like, what's the payoff? But I think writers that really understand that language choice, structure, subject matter, all of these things are there for a purpose, and keeping that purpose in mind.
Yeah.
And everything, all of those elements support that purpose, which is to get you from here to there.
Well, you do a unbelievable job, and all the members of your team do, and it really is a work of art. I mean, I love when it arrives in the mail, and I have a stack of them in my shed where I do all my work, and I look at them. They're just right there, and they'll be there on the shelf forever. And in some ways, I'm embarrassed because I didn't subscribe earlier, and I loved your work, and I love the website, and I look forward to the daily emails, but it just never really added up in my head. Like, I need to support this with my dollars. And so I'm encouraging people who are listening to this, if you're a fan of AJ, support it with your dollars, or if you're a fan of any other independent media, support it with your dollars, because it's easy to overlook that when you've got to get a little sample here and there for free. But as you're hearing in this conversation, I mean, these things, this is a business, and they need support. And so I hope that everybody can do that, because I waited too long, and I wish I had like the number one issue on my shelf. But
yeah,
I'm proud to be a subscriber.
Thank you. I really, honestly, my biggest struggle is trying to get people on board, and part of it is because people are busy. They get so much media for free.
Yep.
They've been conditioned to get a year of a magazine like Outside for the cost of a single copy of one of ours.
Mm-hmm.
And like, from their perspective, it's like apples to apples, right? But like, we could not be farther from Outside. Like, what we're doing is we're working with the same materials, but we're coming from a completely different place, and that's fine. But like, people are just conditioned to think that magazines cost $4 or $5, and and that's that. And I'm not a marketer. I don't really know how to distill this stuff clearly from the way I go on and on. I don't know how to distill things down to a simple quip or a soundbite. And I also think that I do really believe that what we're doing is special, and that stuff to talk about what makes it special takes time, because a lot of it is nuanced, and we think about every single thing that goes into the magazine, from the paper to the pacing of stories throughout the issue, to pacing of photos throughout the issue. I mean, everything. We are considering it to create this package that we want to be really unique in the world, and none of that. And then there's the physicality of it, right? That like this. Like, I can't tell you how many dozens of papers that I felt with my eyes closed, feeling what's called the tooth of it, like how it feels in your fingers.
Yeah.
And to find that right combination of brightness and warmth versus coolness and the feeling as you would flip the page before we got the one that we wanted. Like, we really are trying to make like the best thing that we possibly can. And the physicality and all that stuff, like, you have to see it, you have to smell it, you have to feel it. And you really, I think, need to spend, hopefully, an hour, a good chunk of time where you're not distracted and your phone isn't handy, where you can just lose yourself in these things as the experience as we intend it to be. And then I think that you'll start to see it. And once people, like you, man, once people find us, like, they just don't leave. Like, our renewal rate is 98, 99%. And I've been at a lot of magazines. Like, that's just unheard of. Once people find us, they're all in, and which is, from my perspective, is amazing. But like, communicating that without us going, oh, we're so cool, we're so rad, we're awesome, really, trust me on this one, we're great. Like, I just like, like we kind of have to say it, but like it just feels just stupid and self-serving. And so the slowness of our growth is maybe a function of we just have to trust that people are going to find us at the right time on their own.
Well, and I think they will. And I think this crisis we're in right now, the economic side of it, I think people are understanding, like, all right, whether it's local bookstores or different media sources, that, you got to support who matters to you. You have to. I mean, on my website for this podcast, I used to always link to Amazon. And again, I think I must be halfway asleep all the time or something, because I never really thought that that's not great. And then I realized all these local bookstores that I love so much. Like if I go to a new town, the first thing I do is go to a local bookstore, and I was helping to put them out of business by linking to Amazon. And so I switched that up. And I don't know, like you said, people are busy. I think most people have good intentions. They just need to be reminded. So I'll help sell AJ. I'll be blabbing about it. You don't have to worry about it.
I hope that, let me just try to say this as quickly as I can.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt. I hope that one takeaway that people have is that I think we need to have higher expectations on the brands that we support. I really do. And you can take that in whatever direction you want, whatever your values are. I feel really good about what we're doing. And if there's things that we could be doing better, then we'll be open about that, and we'll be transparent about that. I can talk to anybody about anything regarding AJ. There's not really any secrets to what we're doing. I do think that we as media consumers need to just this needs to be the new expectation about what is considered normal. One thing that I will say that I think is important for readers to know, and I mean, it's self-serving, but I'm not trying to get rich. I'm trying to get to a place where AJ is sustainable, and I can do it for the rest of my life. And I can do it even if the advertising dries up. And we've been talking a lot through our channels to our readers about this. We currently have, as of this morning, 4,800 subscribers and change. For us to be able to survive with no advertising at all, don't know if that's going to happen, but it could conceivably. We can't predict the future. We need to get 7,000.
Yep.
And for us to be able to have actually to make photo assignments and have a little travel budget and be able to make a decent living, we need to get somewhere between 8 to 10,000 ideally. And after that, you're not going to hear from me begging people to subscribe. We don't care. All I care about is getting to the level where we can do what we're doing now to the fullness of the vision of it without constantly having to worry about the finances, or to feel like we maybe need to change things editorially to go chase after dollars.
Sure.
That's a real common thing that people do online. So, and I hope people get that message. I don't really care about money. It's only really, to achieve these goals, which, clearly are greater. So, I think that's also things that people should be asking of their, of the brands. Are you making a rich guy richer, or what are you doing with this? And I'm really inspired. There's all kinds of brands, like what these guys are doing with climate neutral. There's all kinds of brands that are living their values out loud. And so I just hope that people increasingly will celebrate those and support those, whether it's AJ or Rumple or Forsake or Peak Design or whomever.
Yeah, I think that's very timely words of wisdom there. Well, I just looked at the time and we're already burned through the hour, which went really super fast. I got two quick questions I want to ask you that we can wrap up with. The first one, I know that you've been a voracious reader your entire life. And I normally ask people what are their favorite books about the American West, but in your case, I'm more interested in just what are the most formative books you've ever read? Maybe if you could give one or two adventure books that have been important to you, and then just overall books that have kind of helped shape your life and career.
Yeah, so there's really only one, and that would be E.B. White's. I'm gapping on the title. It was a collection of One Man's Meat.
Okay.
Essays, and it was given to me at age 21 or so. I was just starting my career, and it's a little dated just because he was just a keen observer of his time, which is the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But the writing was just spectacular. I mean, it's just incredible, and it actually became kind of my pole star for what I wanted to do with my writing. And in that book in particular, there's an essay called "Once More to the Lake," which is it's just sublime. And in fact, of all the things that I've done with Adventure Journal, that I'm most pleased or proud of is that I was able to track down Evie White's granddaughter, who runs his literary estate, and she gave us permission to run that essay in our first issue, which gives me chills as I'm telling you, because it was just incredible. As far as the American West, like I look for stories that like drive narrative. I am a huge fan of Peter Heller.
He's awesome. He's been on the podcast.
Yeah, Peter's awesome. There's so much poetry written into his writing style. He's just incredible. I mean, there's tons. I mean, there's just tons out there. The one that I actually is new and we're recommending in our fall issue, that's pretty incredible, is The New Wilderness by Diane Cook. Mm-hmm. And it was longlisted for the Booker Prize and just made it to the short list, which is pretty awesome. It is very much a novel of our times. It is semi-post-apocalyptic, but without being preachy. It touches on colonialism and sort of the experience of Native Americans and wilderness and land use. And yet it's this story about this crazy experience of people kind of living in this unique kind of refuge set aside for the least amount of human impact possible. I mean, you need to read it. And I'm also thrilled that Diana and I actually have been in touch since it came out. I didn't know her before this. And if she wins the Booker, I'll probably never hear from her again, but she's really open to writing for, we both hope that she wins and she blows up, but she's really accessible and I'm hoping we'll be able to write for AJ. So I would pick up anything from Peter, and I would definitely strongly recommend The New Wilderness. It's a page turner, and it will really get you thinking about kind of where we are as a country and in terms of our environment and land use and all that sort of stuff.
Perfect. I'll read it. I'll definitely read that. Final question, and you've already given us so much wisdom, but just thinking about everything about the West, about the environment, about climate change, media, all these super important issues that are all kind of colliding right now. Do you have any parting words for the people listening to this podcast?
Sure. Yeah. Don't give up. I mean, this year has been brutal, right? And it just keeps coming. But, this is obviously a very highly politicized time, and I'm not sure that that's going to abate anytime soon. But for me, these issues that we're addressing in AJ, they loom way larger than any of the stuff that we're bickering about. And the thing that looms over everything is the climate emergency, mm-hmm. and what we're going to do about that. Joni's analogy or metaphor, simile, or whatever it is it's a bunch of fleas fighting over the dog. But we've made the dog sick, and we need to figure out what in the world that we're going to do. Most of our little arguing means nothing to the planet, but we do have this huge thing, and it's orders of magnitude more important than anything else that we're dealing with. It doesn't mean that other stuff is like our democracy or whatever. It doesn't mean it's not important. It is important, but this is the defining issue of our time. We still have time to ameliorate the worst impacts of climate change. And there are a lot of incredible people out there who are very smart, working on solutions. Apple, Microsoft, Walmart, and Amazon have all vowed to be carbon free, right? It is percolating through our culture, and it has to happen faster. It has to happen with more brands. This is one of the values of AJ going to being carbon neutral. We need to encourage other brands to do this, but there are all kinds of positive things in terms of solutions. Jay Inslee, the governor of Washington State, his plan, which Biden has basically kind of picked up, has a phenomenal roadmap toward actually getting where we need to be. The Green New Deal, I know, gets a lot of hot shots, but I do believe 100% that when they say that these injustice and inequality is bound up in fixing the climate, these are systemic issues that we need to address, and they're very, very big issues. But we got ourselves here. It was people that got ourselves here, and we just need to look for the leaders who can help us get out and then self-lead. We need to really be at the point where we can't sit on the sidelines anymore. And what you're seeing from AJ right now throughout all of our channels, and we've lost a couple subscribers. We're probably alienating people, but like, we're just being much more vocal about these things, about vote, get out the vote, encourage people. We have to kind of self-radicalize, because the challenge is so great and the time is so short, but there is time, right? Like I do get out of bed every morning feeling positive about this, and not just because I'm an optimist. It's easy to feel really shitty, when you can't go outside for a week because of the smoke. But like, are we going to roll up and do nothing? No, like, we can do this, and we can do it if we get together. So I feel really empowered right now, and I feel blessed that AJ can be one of our channels for these things. And I just would really encourage people like to look for that wherever you can and however you can. We all have so many gifts and so many motivations, but it's clear, like, we have to be participants. Like, we can't just watch other people trying to lead. We all have to figure out what that is for us. And if we do, I feel really confident that we're going to make a difference, and it's not going to be as bad as it is if we do nothing.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for, first of all, taking the time to do this, but thank you for all the hard work you've done for years and years and years and years with your projects. Cause it's making a difference. It's made a difference to me personally. And so you multiply that out, and that's a huge difference you're making. So it's super inspiring and super instructive. And I really appreciate you sharing all this with us.
It's my pleasure, Ed. Thank you. I feel really blessed to be doing what I'm doing, and I'm grateful that people like yourselves are interested enough. And there's a network of amazing people, and that is really inspiring. The people that we connect with in all these strange internet-y ways. It's really cool. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Hey, it's Ed again. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast, and thanks for listening to that particular episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Before you go, I've got 3 quick things. Number 1, if you like the podcast, please do me a huge favor. Either pass it along to a friend who may be interested, share it on your social media, or go to iTunes and give it a 5-star review. All those things would mean a lot to me, and they would really help to spread the word about the podcast. Number 2, if you've listened to many of these episodes, you know that I love reading and I love talking about books. Every other month, I send out a quick email with a few books that I've recently read and highly recommend. The subjects are varied, but they're pretty much all nonfiction with an emphasis on history, biographies, adventure narratives, and topics related to the American West. There are no sales pitches for ranches, no spam, no other kind of nonsense, just books. So if you'd like to sign up for the list, head to Mountain and Prairie/reading, or just go to Mountain and Prairie, and there's a massive tab at the top that says book recommendations. Click on it. There are a ton of good books that I've read. Some of the old email lists are on there. You can go crazy. There are a lot of books. And finally, if you know anyone I should interview for the podcast, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. All my contact info is at mountainandprairie.com, and I'm on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to have some recommendations and suggestions of interesting people I should meet. All right, that's it. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.